This video is going to be 90% about Georgios Giakoumakis, the new Greek god of Scotland. You have been warned. How's it going, folks? Welcome back to the channel. Thanks for joining me this evening. It's time for the Monday breakdown. I wasn't going to do this video because I was on a stag do over the course of the weekend and I am horrifically hungover. But I said I would struggle on because Celtic are now top of the table by 3 points after Rangers dropped points against Dundee United. Celtic winning 3-2 against Dundee, and Celtic are now 3 points clear of Rangers at the top of the SPFL. It's been a pretty good week for Celtic. Georgios Giakoumakis got a hat-trick, 3 one-touch finishes, and if you look at the game on first watch, you might think that Celtic struggled, you might think that they sort of stuttered by, and you might think that maybe we should get a little bit concerned about the fact that Celtic aren't playing all that well even though they're winning. I was actually initially going to come into this video thinking that, Celtic have struggled by another game, and maybe it's time to revise the idea that the 3 points that all that matters in the performance is something that we should be worried about. But on reflection of the game, having watched some of it back and having looked at the data from this game, I don't think Celtic really struggled all that much. I think it was actually quite a bog standard performance against a pretty poor side in Dundee. Yes, the game finished 3-2 in the end. Yes, Giakoumakis kind of pulled it out of the fire and it felt like a late winner and a dramatic win for Celtic. But if you look at the data, Celtic played as standard a performance that you'd really expect against a side against Dundee. Their XG was above 3. They scored 3 goals. They dominated possession. They had loads of passes. They had plenty of chances. And Dundee didn't really threaten Celtic at all, except from the set pieces. That's one thing that Celtic should be worried about, or Celtic fans should be worried about, is set pieces and our continuous lack of ability to defend against set pieces. But in terms of the performance and the overall game, Celtic actually didn't play that badly, even though it kind of felt as if they started through it. Celtic were actually pretty dominant across the 90 minutes of the game. Now, set pieces is something we need to worry about. I think in terms of coaching, there seems to be a weak link there, and there has been calls for Ange to get a specialist in and work on these set pieces, and you probably would expect that to happen at a club the size of Celtic, regardless of whether they were, a little bit weak from that. You'd think that Celtic should have a specialist for set pieces anyway. It comes from the lack of height, the lack of dominance in our air, and it does come from disorganisation as well within the structure of the team. Starfelt as a centre-back is not that tall, he's not that dominant in the air, and there is data to back that up, that aerially, that is his weakest spot. I'm not just picking on him because he's Starfelt. The data is there to back up that he's not strong in the air, so maybe it's finding a way to get him organised a little bit more in the defence. At left back, Greg Taylor is a weak link when it comes to aerial duels. He is small, he's not tall, he is going to be a weak link there. Hatate, not all that big either. Juranovic, not all that big either. He was playing at left back at the weekend, and if you look at Dundee's goal kicks, they were all but one put on top of Juranovic and Hatate down the left hand side. So that's where Dundee targeted Celtic in terms of aerial duels. That's where Dundee thought they were going to get a little bit of pleasure, and that just shows you that teams do know Celtic's weak links and they're going to target them. You can't be a perfect team, you're not going to be a perfect team, and when you have pretty small players across the team, you're probably not going to be all that dominant in the air. So you do need to be a little bit more organised when it comes to set pieces. So hopefully that's something that improves. In terms of Giakoumakis got his hat-trick. This is going to do him the world of good. You saw what it meant to him. You saw how emotional he was after the game scoring the winner. And there were 3 goals that you want your striker to get, especially a striker like Giakoumakis, who's not Kyogo. He's not going to be pressing the opposition. He's not going to be giving you the same energy up front. He's not going to give you the runs off the shoulder. If you have a player like Giakoumakis up front, you want him scoring the 3 goals that he scored against Dundee at the weekend. One-touch curler to put Celtic level on terms, 1 goal, then 1 touch in the 6-yard box to tap in a spill from the goalkeeper, and then a winning goal with his head, getting himself across the 6-yard box. Before that goal actually went in, I was screaming at the TV screen for somebody to run across the 6-yard box, because Ralston was putting in good balls, good deliveries, as was Rogic. There was good service going into the box, but nobody was attacking the front post. Nobody was getting across onto the 6-yard box. And then Giakoumakis did, and Celtic won the game as a result. Now, after the game, Giakoumakis did an interview in the press conference. He was asked about Celtic chances, and instead of actually telling you what he said, here is what Giakoumakis had to say. So that was Giakoumakis speaking after the game in the press conference, and this obviously caused a bit of stir from Rangers fans, from Celtic fans, and from the rest of Scotland as well. And you can see why. They're going to cause a little bit of friction. They're going to cause a little bit of anger from the other side, and they're going to cause a little bit of, maybe calm yourself down a bit from Celtic fans. And that's exactly the reaction that actually happened. Now, I get where people are coming from in terms of wanting to keep this within the confines of the dressing rooms. It's good that the players feel this way. It's good that he has the confidence in his team, that he believes Celtic to be the best team in Scotland. This is all great, but he shouldn't say that in public. I actually don't care whether he says that in public, because I always feel there's more nuanced reasons for things happening than a player saying something to the media, for example. Giakoumakis says that Celtic are the best team in the league. He believes they're going to be champions. If Rangers now go on to win the league, this will be pointed at as a reason, a motivation. It spurred the Rangers players on. The Rangers players may even say that they were pissed off, and they might well be. I'd say the Rangers players are pissed off at Giakoumakis for saying this. I'd say they do want to prove him wrong. But what happens if they don't? Will people point to the Giakoumakis interview to the press? Will they point to this and say, this is why Celtic won the league? No, they won't. They will say that Celtic won the league because Celtic were the best team over the course of the season. Rangers, on the other hand, if they go on to win the league, equally, it's not because Giakoumakis said that Celtic were the best team in February. It's because somewhere along the line, over the course of Giakoumakis' comments, Celtic have made mistakes on the field that have led them to drop enough points to let Rangers back in, and Rangers have managed not to slip up until the end of the season. The talking is always on the pitch, regardless of whether the talking is done off the pitch as well. The talking is always done on the pitch. So it doesn't matter if Giakoumakis says this or not, because they don't impact any results. Rangers aren't going to magically get any points now just because Giakoumakis said this. It might give them a little bit of motivation, but they should have motivation anyway. You know what I mean? They should have motivation to beat Celtic regardless. They shouldn't need motivated. And if it was, say, Ryan Kent that said this about Rangers and Celtic were chasing Rangers for the league, Celtic fans would be pissed off by it. But I believe as a Celtic fan, I would want my players to be motivated regardless of whether Ryan Kent said that. So the Rangers players shouldn't need motivated. They shouldn't need to be spurred on by Giakoumakis' comments. So I believe that they might be, but they need to do it on the pitch, and Celtic need to continue to do it on the pitch. So I think Celtic will prove Giakoumakis to be right, and if not, people will point to it. I don't believe this will have any impact when it comes to real life football on the pitch. The final thing that I want to talk about on the video today is VAR in Scotland. Now, again, there's refereeing decisions across the weekend that you can point to as examples of why VAR should exist in Scottish football. Now, I'm going to lay my cards on the table very early on. I don't want VAR in the Scottish League. I watch football from all sorts of league, be that League of Ireland, Premier League, Scotland. I don't want VAR in Scotland, in Scottish football, because I believe it to strip emotion from the game. If you look at the Man City Spurs games, yeah, there was a couple of big moments, But you genuinely don't know whether a goal is going to stand or not once it goes in now. And there's 90th minute winners where people are absolutely overjoyed, and then straight away that's just stripped away, and you have to wait a minute and a half and wait for these goals to be decided on whether or not they're legal or not. At the weekend, there was a couple of decisions that made me question that belief, because, you know, there was offside calls that were, you know, clearly not offside. There was a couple of tackles, be that from Ryan Jack from Rangers, whether or not he's going to subsequently get a red card for that challenge. But the one that made me question it is the elbow on Giakoumakis when Celtic were still chasing the game. And the reason that is because it was such a blatant decision, and one that you couldn't look back on and say it's not a penalty. I believe if VAR is there, it's a stonewall penalty regardless. Now, again, a problem with the Premier League VAR is that you still have poor officiating, because you still have poor officials making the decision. A bad referee can look at a decision 3 to 4 times and still get it wrong. And Scotland has terrible officials, and if you put an official behind a replay, all he's going to do is continue to look at most of these decisions 3 to 4 times and still make the wrong decision. I still think that's a fatal flaw within the VAR. But there are decisions like the Giakoumakis elbow that you look at and you say, there's absolutely no way that any referee who's behind the wheel of a VAR, being the VAR for the game, could look at that and say it's not a penalty and the right decision was made by the on-field referee. And if they did stand by that and the VAR still didn't give that, there would be questions in the media then, why was this not given? I do firmly believe that. So it did make me question it. I still stand by the fact that I don't want VAR for the number of reasons that I gave there. I just think it strips the game of too much emotion, and I much prefer watching Scottish football for entertainment value in terms of comparing to the Premier League because of VAR, because you're not constantly questioning whether something is going to stand. Yes, there are a multitude of reasons why you could make an argument that VAR should exist, but I still think my main reason for not wanting VAR is you still have bad decisions from bad referees in the Premier League, and that would continue. You'd still see that trend in Scottish football, and you'd be even more annoyed at the weekend why these decisions aren't being made. So if I was pressed on the issue, I don't think I want VAR in Scottish football. So that is it for the Monday breakdown for this week. Thank you so much for watching, and I promise I will be less hungover for the next video. If you watch this video and you're here for the first time, or you're continuous on this channel but aren't subscribed, please do hit the subscribe button below and help the channel grow. Leave a comment as well and like the video so more people can see them. I also have a Ko-Fi account if you want to support the channel. There's no pressure at all, but the link is in the comments below as well. So thanks for watching, folks, and we'll chat to you later on this week for the Huddle breakdown. Good luck.